At the end of last week, I brought you a story that was developing. Not much has developed over the weekend, but a lot of people are talking about it now. And that is the story that Jonathan Lee Riches, the YouTuber who runs a channel, very successful channel with over 500,000 subscribers. It's like 550,000 subscribers. He's kind of a boots on the ground kind of a guy. He makes no secret of the fact that he formerly served time in federal prison, but allegations had come out from his, I believe, ex-girlfriend who went by the name Magnolia online. That he had been, she had been the victim survivor of DV. Now, one of the things that came out in her sworn affidavit in the document that she filed in Arkansas for a PFA, or a protection from abuse order, was that Mr. Riches, this is her allegation, right? Mr. Riches had strangled her a couple of dozen times. Whew, and that sits really badly with me. Because I know that strangulation is a precursor to homicide. And so I'm taking it very seriously. Now, I'm not making any allegations or anything toward Mr. Riches. I'm just saying that the simple fact is that people who are strangled survive are much more likely to be homicide victims. And so I have a friend that I decided to call and talk to. His name is Brian Bennett. He is a former law enforcement officer, retired with 26 years on the job, and talk to him about this case. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into a Nancy Guthrie update, a Suzanne Morphew update, and believe it or not, a Corey Richins update. It's a busy day. Stick it with me. This video contains mature themes and discussions intended only for adult audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello there, my friend. Welcome back to another true crime conversation with me, Gavin Fish. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining me, wherever you're joining me from. And please, in the comments, tell me where you're joining me from, and bonus points if you can do it creatively, and super mega duper bonus points if I can guess where you're from your creative way of saying it. Because I got sick of being stumped. That's basically what happened there. Here on my channel, we like to cut through fluff. We like to cut through speculation. We like to get right to the nitty-gritty of true crime. If that is your deal, then you're in the right place. You found me. I'm glad you did. I do want to say that because we are talking about JLR, that does tend to, at least it has in the past on my channel, kind of attract the trolls a little bit. And they're not all trolls, but it attracts a certain kind that declassifies. Is that the unclassinates? It lowers the class of our live chat and our commentary. And so I have put restrictions on the live chat on YouTube. If you're on Spotify watching this doesn't apply to you. If you're listening on the podcast, does not apply to you. But if you're on the YouTube live, this will apply to you. I've put it to subscribers only, and you have to be a subscriber for like 4 days. So we just like to keep it classy around here, okay? And I'm sorry for those of you that it filters out that are perfectly classy and awesome people. Yeah, you are victims of my filter, but hopefully you will subscribe, and the next time that filter won't apply to you. And that is the plan. Okay, so Gavin, get into it, will you? Get into the nitty gritty. I saw somebody just comment that their brother rode a bull named Nitty Gritty. So I don't want to get into that kind of nitty gritty. Okay, I've got a friend. His name is Brian Bennett. I'm going to bring up this video we have recorded. I talked with Brian earlier today. Okay. Now, like I said, Brian is a 26-year law enforcement veteran down in South Carolina. He specifically is a strangulation guy. He now runs a company called Clearview Justice Training and Consulting, and he really is on the front lines of strangulation cases. So I'm going to play this video. It's going to look like this when I play it, so it kind of looks like my regular old screen, right? For those of you watching, again, if you're on the podcast, you're like, I don't care, Gavin, move along. But you'll see that it says recorded earlier because I just want you to know that this conversation that I had with Brian is not live. Hey, Robin's angry at me right now, guys. I have not seen her comment, but Robin keeps me honest on my set design. Got to get that typewriter light on in the background. Anyway, we're going to move ahead with this conversation with Brian Bennett. It is it's about 45 minutes long. We might pause along the way, but I'm going to be taking a look at your comments. As always, if you put GF in the comment, which stands for Gavin Fish, not girlfriend or gluten-free, but if you put GF in the comment, that will highlight it on my end. I see those much, much easier. Okay, without further ado, let's go ahead and begin this interview of Brian Bennett. Here we go. Well, I'd like to welcome back to the program Brian Bennett, who is a retired state law enforcement officer and runs Clearview Justice Training and Consulting. And the reason I wanted to have you on, Brian, was because in this case with JLR, these allegations, and I'm being very careful about this because these are allegations at this point. To my knowledge, Mr. Riches hasn't been arrested yet, and yet is kind of pejorative too. We don't know if he ever will be arrested, but we know that there was a narrative that was filed that the officers said that he had probable cause to arrest Mr. Riches for 3 different crimes, stemming from this incident that happened on Christmas Eve of 2025 in the state of Washington and Chelan County. Am I being fair taking this very seriously? Because one of the criticisms that I'm getting is that, hey, these are just allegations. This is just an angry woman. Hasn't been proven, hasn't been anything. And I kind of feel like, well, all allegations are exactly that, right?
Right. No, I agree. The way the law enforcement system and the criminal justice system is laid out is it is designed to help remove emotions from the decision-making process and solely focus on facts. But the reality is that when a law enforcement officer takes a report, at least initially, they're being relayed a story in the perspective of the person who has lived that event. And in my experience of 26 years of law enforcement, you can go to a scene and count how many people are on the scene, and everyone has their own unique perspective, some that will support each other, some that will be counter to each other. But at least with the initial complainant, you're taking that initial statement as their experience, as they lived it. Rarely have I ever found that in a domestic incident situation has a victim intentionally lied. Now,
I
again, that's
suppose, though, it could be true that a victim could do that, and actually,
correct.
there are documented cases of SA. I'm
Mhm.
thinking in there was like an entire college, what was it, rugby team or something, or lacrosse team that was
Lacrosse team,
expelled.
yes,
Yeah, right. So it does happen for sure.
yes,
But from
yep.
your experience, that is a rare occurrence.
It is a rare occurrence. Again, just for the simple fact that a domestic violence victim survivor reaches out to law enforcement in the first place is an amazing thing, because when you look at studies that have been done related to domestic violence and intimate partner violence, generally what the studies rely on is self-reporting in substantiated cases of the complaints and claims that were made. But everyone in the realm of domestic violence agrees that what we know as far as our numbers and are substantiated doesn't accurately reflect the true numbers that have actually occurred, because most domestic victim uh, survivors don't report to law enforcement initially. Months or years or weeks can go on before they finally get to a point to report in the first place. And there may already be a significant history of weeks, months, or years that have never been reported. So the simple fact that someone calls law enforcement and wants to get the government involved in a personal situation says something. And that's why,
Yeah.
in my experience, um, people that have called and filed are speaking their truth, and rarely is it a manufactured event. Because quite frankly, and you know this, and most of your viewers probably know this, is if you file a false report, you can be subject to criminal penalties and or civil actions against you.
Sure.
So I thought, again,
So
it's very telling when someone wants the government in their personal business.
right, and in this case, Ms. Phillips did say, I think, in her petition for a PFA that it had been happening since 2023, and that, I mean, I read these reports kind of on the daily, right? In my day job, when I'm writing up criminal complaints, writing up stories about criminal complaints, uh, you know, I see this pretty frequently, very
Mhm.
frequently. Sometimes it is the same law enforcement officer is writing up a report or a affidavit of probable cause for the criminal complaint against somebody, and it's like their ninth time out there, right? And
Correct.
the victim, usually, it's not always, but usually a woman, and and typically they weren't able to make an arrest because, or they weren't able to prosecute because the victim decided that they weren't going to cooperate, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah,
this is
and we
a
see
difficult thing.
we see that desire to help law enforcement with the investigation and or future prosecution wane at different times. If you imagine a scenario where someone's been targeted for abuse and law enforcement is there, um, many victim survivors at that point, when law enforcement is present, feel emboldened and empowered because law enforcement is there, knowing that law enforcement is not going to allow any more abuse or threats to occur in their presence.
In
And
that
so
moment.
in that moment, so it's easier
Yeah.
to say, "Yep, I want to prosecute. I want to go through with this." But then when law enforcement leaves, even if there is an actual physical separation between the two parties, either by an advisement or an actual arrest, those offers to help law enforcement a lot of times are rescinded for a lot of reasons, primarily fear and retaliation and lack of resources. But when law enforcement's responding at that moment, um, they are providing a level of protection. Does have the intent to help the victim feel better about cooperating, sharing information, providing some level of clarity to get to the truth of the matter. But it does change at different times. I mean, I've had cases right up until the point of trial. Uh, Everything was great, and then as we're walking in the courtroom, the victim survivor discloses, "I'm not going to participate." And to another example, I had a case where a young lady who was pregnant at the time of her abuse, she was 9 months pregnant and was strangled at that time. We go to trial, and as we are getting ready to call the court into order, people are at their tables. Of course, I'm over at the prosecution table with the prosecutor and what is supposed to be the victim in this case. And as she walks in, she changes from walking in our direction to our prosecution table and goes and sits at the defendant's table. Right there,
Oh,
right there, literally seconds before trial starts. And
jury is impaneled, the whole thing.
yeah, and she's also carrying her newborn baby because the baby was born by the time the trial.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
imagine being in that position. Like this does require a lot of sympathy on well, I imagine that's really frustrating as a law enforcement officer to go through that process, but I also imagine that there's some level of understanding, right? It's like, ooh, the fear that these victims have to feel going into a room, a government room. It's usually very official, right? And where we live, it's like historic. You're going into a room with like tall, ceilings and, coffered ceilings and wood, and you've got a judge up on a bench and you've got a jury in the box. It's a scary moment.
Mm. And this is where there has to be some empathy and some understanding with our law enforcement officers and our prosecutors to understand that the decision that these victims survivors make are not because they hate us as a prosecutor and they necessarily hate us as law enforcement officers. They're making a decision based in their own personal interest of safety, which is a higher level than in the interest of the government to hold the offender accountable. And again, so I have never looked down upon a victim who's made that decision. But what I've always promoted and what should be promoted is that each and every time that victim survivor needs us, we should be reliable to respond and very clear in our desire to help and actually help when the time's called. And it's been also my experience that in instances where cases that I charged and prosecuted didn't go forward because of lack of victim participation or whatever, that the right responses to the domestic situation laid the groundwork for later cases where the victim survivor then became the willing participant because of the consistency of our law enforcement response.
Yeah, and I guess the other part of that is the consistency or the repetition of the abuse, right? It's just
Correct, that too as well.
that's
I mean, there comes a time in everyone's mind where there has to be a decision on when is enough enough,
yeah.
and for some, it's a decision that I'm going to do stuff for my children's benefit that I normally wouldn't do for myself. So maybe the children's or the lives are more at risk, and that is what places the victim survivor into that position to now move forward in spite of the fear. And then others, more internally, it's their own safety and fear, realizing that things have progressively gotten worse, and the next time might be the last time. So it's time for me to step up.
I've got a couple of specific questions, but
Sure.
I can't. I can't reiterate what you just said. I can't tell you how much I agree with what you just said. I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but I'm constantly seeing in my area the same victim survivors and the same alleged perpetrators. It happens over and over again. And I've told my channel about one case that happened in our area where the DV survivor, her toddler son was murdered by her boyfriend, by her live-in boyfriend, while she was off at work. And then she endeavored after the fact to cover up the murder, not because she wanted to, but because she was fearful for her life and for the life of her other son, right? Like it is that fear is so overpowering. And I just, for Miss Phillips here, I was feeling, and we're about the same age. She's 49 years old. I'm 50, but I was feeling these strong paternal pings of like, atta girl and good job. And I can't believe you're doing, this is amazing because this is really hard stuff to do.
Yeah.
I want to, go ahead.
Yeah, I have an example, and I can't remember if we've talked about this before. The example that I'm getting ready to provide, or it was another podcast that I did. But let me give everyone an example of how fear is probably the most controlling factor in these situations. But I'm going to use a slightly different example. This is one that I've used for years. So when I'm explaining fear as a motivator for someone not to act in their own interest, well, let me correct that in saying that fear is a motivator for many different things. But in this example, I think this will clarify what fear means.
Okay.
So years ago, and this is many years ago, I saw a TV show either on the History Channel or the Learning Channel. I can't remember. It might have been the Military Channel, but it was a show about prisoners of war, military prisoners of war. And in that show, they talked about different disciplines within the military: pilots, special forces, people in combat situations, particularly. And these are individuals who have gone through something called SEER training, which is Escape and Evasion School. And what it's designed to do, the military has poured in billions and billions of dollars to specifically train various soldiers in specific disciplines to how to evade capture, and if they are captured, how to deal with the trauma, the terror, the manipulation, psychological torture, physical torture, in those situations. And again, billions of dollars have been spent doing this. And one of the things they discussed during the program is they talked with prisoners of war who had been, POWs in various conflicts. World War II, Korea, Vietnam was primarily the framework that they used. And some were prisoners of war for years, some just days. But they asked them this question. They said, "Did you ever try to leave?" And by the large majority, most of them said no. And it was for two very particular reasons. One reason given was, I had a pretty good idea that I could escape, but I was afraid of what would happen to me if I got caught. The other answer was, I saw opportunities to escape, but I was afraid of what would happen to my buddies that were left behind. If this is the conversation that trained military professionals with billions of dollars of training have with themselves, making a decision to stay in a violent, terror-filled situation, and they can't do it, again, they're making a decision to not do it for good reasons. Why would we expect a domestic violence victim who's a prisoner of war in their own home to make any other decision?
Very good point. Yeah.
And obviously the point is that these individuals in their homes have a lot less resources and a lot less training than these military professionals who are, by most accounts, people would say, well, military professionals are trained to be tough and, push through adversity and deal with pain and discomfort.
And still react the same way to the same incentives.
Still react the same way because of fear.
Yeah. I want to ask a couple of specific questions about this case. Miss Phillips and Mr. Riches were staying in a hotel in Chelan County, Washington, over Christmas. And her words on her petition for a PFA were that Mr. Riches fled before police got there. A couple of the allegations she made was that he took her phone. He told her that he would kill her if she said anything to law enforcement. Not just in this instance, but in many instances, she says. And that, let's see, she was exploited financially. He used intimidation, and then he fled. Now, I want to talk specifically about fleeing or ask you specifically about fleeing because, again, in my day job as a reporter, writing up reports on criminal complaints, it does seem to be the normal thing when police arrive for the victim to be there and the perpetrator to be gone. Do you think that leaving the scene is, or does law enforcement treat that as an indication that there is some, what we maybe refer to in trial as a consciousness of guilt, something like that? Is that an indication to law enforcement, the fact that the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator is no longer there, that they need to take this seriously?
Yes. In my opinion, in my training, we would definitely give a strong consideration that the claims by the victim survivor, the complainant, have some weight to them, and again, with facts and specifics that they've shared. But the fact that the perpetrator in the case has fled does give us cause to believe, in many cases, that they likely, again, not proven, but likely were the aggressor in these situations. But with that being said, I've always cautioned law enforcement officers to not immediately jump to a decision of arrest because being good law enforcement officers, we are supposed to consider all sides of the story and give fair opportunity for people to tell us their side of the story. So, what I've often taught our law enforcement officers in South Carolina is, yeah, you can definitely have in your mind a hypothesis that, well, it's probably likely that they did in fact do some of these things as alleged. I need to find them for sure. However, when I do find them, um, be fair enough to give them the opportunity to explain their version of events and their perspective. I mean, there's been times in my own cases where the domestic abuse was so severe and witnessed by independent parties that I was like, okay, we're putting out a bolo. We'll be on the lookout for this car and this person. When you find them, detain them, call me to the scene, and I've made a determination that I'm going to make an arrest out of probable cause. But even so, at the time of arrest, and if there's going to be any questioning, there's going to be Miranda. We have custodial interrogation,
Mm-hmm.
as the courts have ruled, but I still want to talk to this person. I still want to give them the opportunity to give me their version of the events. So even in an arrest situation, that opportunity to disclose their perspective is available. And in other instances, we find people, we still haven't made the decision of probable cause to arrest, but again, we still should provide the opportunity to give us their version of the events, and taking that into consideration with other factors. So, for example, I tell, again, law enforcement officers or anybody, it's just fair and it's doing your due diligence to not just take what people tell you, but also see if you can find physical evidence that substantiates their side of the story. That's what we call evidence-based prosecution. Testimony-based prosecution, because people's testimony can change, their
Yeah.
willingness to talk can change. Testimonial evidence is considered the weakest type of evidence because of that. But if we can find tangible things, if we can find documentary evidence, physical evidence that backs up what we were told, that strengthens the facts of the case, that strengthens probable cause. But we need to take every opportunity in every situation to give everyone a chance for a full account of their perspective.
I speaking of gathering evidence in this case, I really liked how I think it was a deputy that was writing the narrative said. I think I can find this pretty quickly. Um, let's see. Here we go. I asked Jamie if she'd be willing to have her injuries photographed for documentation. She agreed. Due to most of the medics on scene and myself being male, and one of the areas of injury requiring Jamie to lift her shirt, I asked a female medic if she would be willing to take photos of Jamie's injuries with my department-issued cell phone in the bathroom of the hotel room, to which she agreed and completed. These photos will be uploaded for evidence. So tell me about those kinds of situations. Like I read this and I was like, man, good on you. You made that victim survivor feel comfortable in the situation. She knows that everybody's going to see the pictures anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are going to be dozens of people along the way, right? That see the pictures, but in that moment, to make her comfortable, do it with a female, do it in a closed space. She doesn't have to be super vulnerable in front of all these men, all these medics and police officers who, granted, are there for her. But I just felt like that was, I don't know. I felt, again, a swelling of paternal pride for this deputy who seemed to do the right thing, took care of this victim.
Absolutely, and he did exactly what I would encourage any officer to do. Again, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Again, as many times as I've had victims recount or rescind their statements and their testimony, pictures speak for the victim who can't speak for themselves, either can't speak or are unwilling. I mean, think about someone who's ultimately deceased.
Right.
Maybe later on there's a homicide and they're not available to testify in court, but those pictures tell a story. I love the approach because it's always promoted to take lots and lots of pictures when it comes to a domestic violence assault. You talk to any prosecutor, they'll say their best cases have lots and lots of pictures. Their worst cases don't have so much.
Yeah, and in
And
this case,
but
Jamie, she decided, she was asked if she would go to the medical center. Yes, she went to the medical center. So there's more documentation there. And then she released the records. There's more documentation there. Does this lend again to, these are just allegations, but does this lend to the credibility of what happened, that the victim is not hemming and hawing over releasing this to police?
absolutely, absolutely. And here's the kind of the psychological aspect of this officer's interaction. Jamie has had things done to her against her will and against her wishes. The officer has empowered her to make decisions. Are you willing to? Would you be willing to? Would you consider? And he's putting that power dynamic back into her realm or her part of the court. And it, in this case, has some significant benefit to it. So I like that approach, first of all. And again, all these multiple levels of individuals looking or examining the situation. Again, they're on the scene, documenting on the scene, then going to the medical facility, the release of medical records, which is something that I promoted in my protocols all the time, is always have a release of medical records form, because to not have those makes it not impossible, but significantly harder to access some of that HIPAA protected information. My only criticism of this situation is a scenario in which, what if there were no females on the scene? And so in trainings that I did, I had to address that. I say, look, especially as a male dealing with a female victim survivor, you may not have a female officer around. You may not have a female paramedic available to you, but you are a professional. You are a professional the same way a doctor or a nurse is a professional. There's plenty of people that go to doctors and nurses and you have to disrobe and have things done that aren't necessarily the most comfortable things. But when the benefit of the exam is explained and the overall health and wellness foundation of that, law enforcement officers can be in the same position. Hey, again, sir or ma'am, it's really important for me to document, this, and this for these reasons. Would you feel comfortable with me doing this in this way and in this format and in this environment? And sometimes, and I've again had cases myself where there were no females available, but again, because of the respectfulness, the attention, the concern that was shown, keeping things very professional, I had victims willing to, show me things that would otherwise be private, but were necessary to take pictures of. Because let's imagine for a moment that she did not go to a medical center. She did not see a forensic nurse in anything in a clinical setting. The opportunities for those pictures could be lost, and it could be critical in the final outcome of this situation. But again, that's one thing. But the other thing that's a criticism, and this comes with training and experience, is medical professionals need to stay in the medical role. And what I mean by that is that a paramedic or EMT is not a criminal investigator. It's not intended for them to be. And so when the camera was handed to the medical professional to take pictures, what now has happened is that medical professional has now been converted to an agent of law enforcement, whether intentional or not.
Yeah.
The better approach would be to have that paramedic present in that same exam area but the law enforcement officer be the one to take the pictures, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good criticism.
I'm splitting hairs here, but it gets down to some legal issues of testimony and cross-examination in the court process that could complicate things to some degree.
Well, I'm sure a good defense attorney would bring, the custody of the camera, and there'd be a lot of things. That's a good point.
But overall, to your point, it was a great insight from the officer in following up what they should be doing in due diligence to collect and document as much evidence as possible.
Okay, I want to get into the strangulation allegations. For those of you who are new to the channel, you haven't seen Brian, he's been on a few times. He is a strangulation expert, one of the best experts in the nation when it comes to strangulation. He's doing some cutting edge stuff on forensics when it comes to strangulation, and so we want to get into that. That's because she alleges over 24 times that she was strangled by Mr. Jonathan Lee Riches. Before we do, though, you just brought up something that reminded me of our last conversation. You gave us advice on the last conversation for victims of DV, victims of SA who go to a hospital for an examination. They should be specifically asking for a forensic nurse, right? What is it that people should be asking for?
Yeah. So, first of all, let's just say that when it comes to the dangers of strangulation, both immediate and in the long term, most citizens don't know the significance of those dangers and the high risk of lethality in the hours and days and even months ahead. But when that knowledge is there, or when the advisements and training have been offered, it's my advice to people that when they go to the medical center, wherever it is, large hospital, small hospital, urgent care, whatever it is, that they specifically ask for a forensic nurse, um, because they've been strangled. Now, the common word that's used is choked, and we can get into that in a minute why that terminology is incorrect, but that's commonly what the term is used. And the reason that we want a forensic nurse involved is that these are nurses, predominantly female, but some male, who've been through special forensic training to examine people in very specific ways and document those findings for the dual purpose of medical triage and criminal justice purposes. So, in contrast, if you go to a hospital and you don't use that terminology, you may just get a nurse, registered nurse, and an emergency room doctor. And just because they have those designations, those certifications, does not mean they have any special insight into all the subtle signs and symptoms of strangulation and all the terrible internal things that could be going on that could cause someone's death. Quite frankly, here in my state, by the large majority, most of your emergency room doctors have absolutely no knowledge of strangulation, subtle signs, symptoms, and injuries, or even what medical exams to order. But forensic nurses do, and this is why we need to tap into that and ask for it. Forensic nurses are not numerous. They're not at every hospital. So when someone goes to a medical center, they may be directed to a higher level hospital. I think they have levels 1 through 4. Usually, trauma 1 hospitals are like your highest level of life-saving equipment interventions. So someone may be advised to leave the urgent care and go to the nearest trauma hospital. Or some of your forensic nurses operate in regional teams where if it's not easy for the domestic violence victim or strangled victim to travel, the forensic nurse comes to where they are. And they bring their exam kit and all their information and all their equipment and their cameras and documentation forms and laptops, and they do it right there. But that's why it's important to use some specific words and ask for some specific things. You just get a better level of understanding and a deeper level of particulars that are missed by most medical professionals.
Yeah, and so I would say, for those of you who are watching who are DV survivors or current victims, or maybe not, maybe you have an experience a year from now, your very first DV experience that could happen. Keep that in the back of your mind that you should be looking for a forensic nurse. And then the second part of that, if you are a nurse and you're watching this, get the training and certification, become a forensic nurse. It is a huge help to the communities in which you live and serve. So, okay, let's get into strangulation. In my last live stream about this case, which was on Friday, don't have the expertise. I have like contact expertise. I rub up against Brian every once in a while, and a little bit comes off onto me, right? But my understanding, Brian, like if somebody has put their hands around somebody's neck and has attempted to strangle them, and again, those that are watching, they may say choke, and we know that that is not really what it is. Still tell your doctors that's what happened. If that's the word that comes to your mind, still
Mhm.
say that, right? That's perfectly fine. But I seem to remember that it does not take very much pressure to cause uh, a lethal strangulation when somebody's manually putting their hands around somebody's neck. And I seem to remember you compared it to a firm handshake one time when we were talking. Can you tell us the difference like what does lethality take, and how do we understand what that is?
Yeah. So the first thing we have to understand is basic structures of the neck that um, uh, supply our brain with oxygen. So we have our trachea, which is the pathway, the cartilage pathway that allows us to breathe air into our lungs. And obviously, with our heart and lungs working together, we have our carotid artery, which is the oxygenated blood going into the brain. And then we have the jugular vein, which takes the deoxygenated blood from the brain back into the heart and lungs to repeat the process of providing oxygen into our bloodstream. So those are the three main structures that if they are blocked or occluded individually or any combination thereof, it lowers oxygen in the brain in what we call a hypoxic or an anoxic state. So that's like a low level oxygen state or a no oxygen state. And it doesn't take a lot of pressure to occlude, or that's the fancy word, but the common word is to block those structures. So your jugular vein sits closer to the surface of the front of your neck, and it rests on either side of your trachea, where your voice box is right here. And it only takes about 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure to close off or block the jugular vein. The carotid artery, which is slightly behind the jugular vein, is a little bit deeper in the muscle of the neck. It only takes about 10 to 11 pounds of pressure to block off or occlude. And then our trachea, which is right here in the front, because of its more rigid nature and but flexible as cartilage material, takes about 30 to 33 pounds of pressure to close that off. And people say, well, how do I give something to compare it to? It takes 20 pounds of pressure to open a can of soda with your finger. So to pop the metal tab on your favorite can of soda takes 20 pounds of pressure per square inch. Again, it only takes about 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure to close off your jugular vein. And if you close off,
I'm going to pause for just 1 second because we've been going on this video for about 35 minutes, and there are people that have joined us that don't know that what it is that we're talking about. Last Friday, I did a video where we went over the police report and an application for a protection from abuse order from the former girlfriend of Jonathan Lee Riches. Her name, why am I blanking, is Jamie Phillips. She goes online by Magnolia. She's been seen on JLR's channel. Jonathan Lee Riches has a YouTube channel called JLR Investigates. Anyway, Ms. Phillips, Magnolia, alleged that she was abused by JLR in a hotel room in Washington State over the Christmas holiday. There's a long affidavit or a narrative, a probable cause affidavit that we read. You can go to my Patreon page and see that for my patrons, or you can go back to Friday's live stream on my YouTube channel or on my Spotify channel, and you will be able to see that. I thank you to my patrons who make it possible to do my work. So as a thank you to them, that's where I put documents. But anyway, another case out of Arkansas, which is where the protection from abuse order was applied for and granted, said that he had strangled her a couple dozen times. So that is what we're talking about here. We're talking about JLR Investigates being our suspect. Remember, these are allegations, not facts, not anything proven in court. These are only allegations. But on our true crime channels, including JLR's, we go over allegations all the time. And to me, Strangulation and DV, they're so underreported and under talked about. We have to talk about these things because they are precursors to homicide. And that's why I decided to do this. And that is what we are talking about today. With that, let's go ahead and continue the video with Brian Bennett.
Your jugular vein or carotid artery with those pressures from anywhere between 5 to 10 seconds. It varies a little bit with people's like muscular structure of their neck and maybe how much their heart is pumping and what their internal blood pressure is. But about 5 to 10 seconds, you're going to be unconscious. Your brain is going to go to an anoxic state where it has no oxygen and then goes into shutdown.
And just to be clear, Brian, like when that happens, the victim can still be breathing, right? Like they don't
Correct.
feel like they're being choked. They could be breathing, and with 4.5 pounds.
They actually do feel like they can't breathe, but it's a medical physiological thing that's happening. So there was a national case, and the Eric Garner case that some people may remember up in New York, where Eric Garner was selling cigarettes, bootleg cigarettes on the streets of New York, and a New York police level task force encountered him, was trying to place him into custody, and he was a relatively large guy, I believe over 300 pounds. 3 or 4 police officers jumped on him, and one of them put a manual hold around his neck. And in the video, he kept saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe." What that is telling myself and others who are familiar with these structures of the neck and the different ways the pressures can be applied, if he's saying he can't breathe, he can breathe because air is coming through the trachea over the larynx to project his voice. The reason he says he can't breathe is because in his brain, the brain has detected oxygen starting to drop. So physically, he feels, I'm not getting air, even though he is. The air is just not getting into the bloodstream. Again, air is coming in and out, but it's not being put into the bloodstream because of the blockage here at the neck. The brain is going, I don't have my oxygen. I don't have my oxygen. It kicks in this, survival instinct. So depending on how someone is strangled, either manual with, their hands or a part of someone's body, or a ligature, one or more of these structures can all be affected at the same time or separately. And so you may have someone who has a completely intact open trachea, but because of the compression on the side of their neck and those vessels, we still have a diminished oxygen to the brain. But on the flip side, this is where chokeholds, as they call it, versus what they call the sleeper hold. The chokehold, that's where the term choking comes from, is where there's pressure on the trachea only. So that pressure into, now that right there takes quite a bit longer to render unconsciousness because the heart and the circulatory system is still pumping, but it's using up the oxygen. There's a larger volume of oxygen in the lungs that has to be burned through. So the oxygen is dropping at a lower, slower level than the supply lines up here in the trachea, in the jugular vein or carotid artery. I tell people, think of a garden hose. You kink it, shut it off. The flow of water stops immediately. There's no it depends on how slow or how fast the compression is. And in strangulation, the compression is usually very, very fast, not a lot of pressure. And so the flow of blood in the carotid artery and jugular vein is almost immediate. It's like very quick.
In terms of this case where she is alleging that she, since 2023, has been strangled 24 times, I know that strangulation is an indicator of future homicide, right? It increases the likelihood, if a person has been the victim of strangulation, it increases the likelihood they will be a victim of homicide, right? Am I reading that correctly? Why is it so important when we read that she says she has been strangled 24 times? What does that tell? What should that tell us? Why should we take this seriously?
Right. So data and research over the last 20 years has shown that non-fatal strangulation is the number one indicator of a future homicide, particularly in domestic violence situations involving female females who are targeted for abuse. Matter of fact, um, the research that is out says that a woman who survives one non-fatal strangulation event is at an 800% increase of being killed later. And again, this isn't
Whoa.
anecdotal. This is data that's been tracked over 20 years. And I don't know if there's an actual source for this, but I've heard from other people like myself that these research studies are now indicating rates around 900 to 1,000% increase, not 800. Again, because as more data comes in, there's more solid evidence. So the fact that she was strangled 2 dozen times, as she claims, and that she's still alive is to me absolutely amazing. That she's still alive, either through the act of strangulation or as most commonly is by a firearm. Uh, People say, well, if they've been strangled, is the death by strangulation? No, commonly is more often by firearm. It's just that the strangulation was the precursor red flag indicator that a homicide was going to occur later. It just happens to be with a firearm because it's readily available. It's more quickly used. It's more immediately lethal. But here's the thing. I don't know how many of those times she lost consciousness or didn't
Right.
lose consciousness. The fact of the matter, it doesn't matter. Even if you don't lose consciousness, your risk of dying from the internal damage to your body and your brain, you could die hours, weeks, or months later from complications from that strangulation event, even though you didn't lose consciousness. And that's where misinformation and no education, people are like, oh, well, she stayed awake the whole time. She's not in danger. Oh no, she was absolutely in danger. Anyone in that situation needs immediate medical triage to stabilize their body. And beyond that, and there's at least 25 known medical complications with being strangled, at least. Many of them are
Wow.
acute and life threatening. But even without that, you're talking about progressive traumatic brain injury. A lot of people equate traumatic brain injury to concussive injuries like an explosion or getting hit in the head with an object. But the reality is that strangulation and depriving the brain of oxygen causes traumatic brain injury because it causes brain cell death. And so progressive and repetitive acts of strangulation also progressively cause brain damage. And it changes people's behavioral characteristics, it changes their thought processes and their clarity, it affects their memory, and it even can cause some victims to have ideations. I'm actually very familiar with a couple cases here in my area where some victim survivors at the time um, seemed to be okay, but later in the weeks and months after they expressed some ideations they had never expressed before. No one ever knew them talk about those things, and ultimately they took their lives. And it's my belief that they did something that was out of their character and not part of who they were, but was artificially created through acts of strangulation. And so the death did not occur at the hands of the abuser, but it came at their own hands, but because of what the abuser had done.
Well, the irony,
There's a lot of neurobiology research into this type of stuff that's much deeper than we can go into today, but
yeah,
it's out there. The research has been done.
the irony on this to me is that Mr. Riches was a like on the front lines, boots on the ground, as he says, in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, when the allegations that Pastor J.P. Miller's actions had led to ultimately Micah Miller's death. He was like boots on the ground, and now he is being accused of the same kind of behavior. It's yeah. Brian Bennett from Clearview Justice Training and Consulting, a strangulation expert, retired state law enforcement officer. Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for the invitation.
Brian is the best. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with him. While we have been watching that, I've been watching the live chat in a way that I normally don't get to. I only get to do this when there is a pre-recorded interview or some video that we're watching. I can go through the live chat. I have to say, a lot of people in the live chat who are DV victim survivors. And a lot of people have been so encouraging to those of you who are those survivors. And I just want to add my thoughts to that as well, and my feelings to that as well. It's just it's amazing anybody who's able to get out of that, because it's just so hard, and it's so easy for the rest of society, the rest of us, to say, well, why didn't you just leave, not understanding the psychology behind it. And I think that Brian's example of prisoners of war who have gone through SEER training and have been taught to evade capture and taught to escape have the exact same reasons why they don't try, right? Fearful of what would happen to them if they were caught again, fearful of what would happen to their brothers who they leave behind in the POW camp. It's just, guys, the psychology is not only interesting but powerful on victim survivors of DV. And so I add my I this just seems so trite, but I add my congratulations and my support to you for having escaped, if that is you. Now, if you are currently in a situation where you are experiencing DV, and that sounds like such a like a it's I use that language because YouTube kind of makes us use that language. I don't want to downplay, but if you are in that situation right now, help is available. All of us will be supportive of you. Look in your county for help. In the United States, I should have looked this up before we started. Let me just look this up here real quick. I think it's 211. Yeah, so in the United States, if you pick up the phone and dial 211, that will get you in touch with essential services that are available in your county. In your county or near your county, if your county, you know, what was the word that I'm trying? Sometimes they don't have them in each county, and so that they will, as counties, they will get together and they will look for a solution. But anyway, it'll be near you. If you dial 211 and explain what's going on, there is a place where you can go with your children. The county picks up the bill, right? If you need them to. So, and I know that's just so hard. I know that's difficult, but if you're in that position, please, please, please avail yourselves of that. Get out of that position. The likelihood of you surviving long term goes down with each and every time you are abused. Now, this is Mr. Riches. He, again, has JLR Investigates. You can see that on his hat. He's kind of a boots on the ground live streamer type. These are only allegations against him. They're allegations. They are not, they've not been proven in a court of law. I do not know if there is an arrest warrant for him or anything. I have no idea. Haven't been able to find out that information, but I am looking for it. I promise you, I am looking for it. So that's what I have on the case so far. We will continue to keep our eye on it. I would love to talk with Magnolia on this. At the same time, though, I don't want to have to put her in that position. Only if she wants to talk about it. I wouldn't mind talking with Mr. Riches either. I would have that conversation for sure. So if either of you are watching, please reach out. Go to my website, gavinfish.com. If you're new here, my website is a deep resource for all things true crime. But if you go to this little icon right here that looks like a envelope and click on that, that will take you to a form that you can fill out and you can reach out to me. Really need to work on the loading speed of my website. But anyway, there it is. Reach out to me. I would love to talk to you. And that's not all we have to talk about today, because there are all sorts of things happening in the headlines in true crime. But before we get to that, why don't we answer some questions? It's 3 questions.
It's 3 questions with Gavin Fish.
Okie dokie. In this segment, guys, I answer questions that you send in to me. My favorite kinds of questions are the kinds of questions where you ask me to answer them, but also I can ask you to answer them in the comments and in the live chat. If you send your questions to 3questions@gavinfish.com, I solemnly promise that I will answer every question that comes in. I will do so to the best of my ability. I will not dodge anything. Anything's on the table. Nothing is off the table. Just send them to 3questions@gavinfish.com. You can send many at a time. You can send one at a time. You can send one at a time many times. However you want to do it. Does not matter to me. All right, question number 1 comes from Angela. And that question, let me get to the right screen, is here. Angela asks, what do you think about conspiracy theories? My thoughts on conspiracy theories is there's a lot of garbage out there, theoretical garbage, but that there are anti-conspiracy laws on the books because conspiracies happen. So I just try to use my brain in order to determine what I will believe and what I won't. A lot of people are very good at making you think that something that's just absolute garbage is a real thing. So you got to use the old mente, right? Got to use it and determine for you what is real and what is not. Generally speaking, the kinds of conspiracy theories that people are talking about are like cuckoo. I just don't buy into them at all. But that's just me. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Question number 2. Lynette asks, Gavin, what is your favorite food? Well, if you saw pictures of me from 6 months ago, my answer would be food is my favorite food. I used to do a lot of eating. These days, I'm down 80 pounds from my peak, and I'm feeling very, very good. But I will tell you a food that I have missed while I have been on my journey to feel and look better. But I will go back to it as soon as I have calories in the old budget, the daily calorie budget. I love me Chinese food. Chinese food is the best. And I'm not talking like authentic Chinese food. I'm talking the Chinese food that they feed to us Americans here in America. That's what I like. A funny story. I used to work for a guy at LH Labs. His name was Larry. His name still is Larry. Larry's a great guy. Taiwanese. And he immigrated to the United States, and he was the opposite of me. He was a Taiwanese-born man who loved American cuisine. I am an American-born man who loves Chinese cuisine. And Taiwanese, I do love Taiwanese too. But anyway, Larry and I would travel together every once in a while, and we'd be in somewhere Timbuktu. We'd be like in Germany. And I'd be like, dude, let's go get some Chinese food. And he'd be like, come on, man. Can't we get something else? Like, okay, how about Thai? And he'd say, yeah, Thai's good. Okay, I know a good Thai place. In Munich or wherever it was that we were. I go there, and yeah, I had Thai food, but I was ordering the Chinese food off the menu. Poor guy. Didn't matter where we went. I always made him get Chinese food. He just wanted a burger. So funny. So yeah, that's my deal. I think my favorite food is like kung pao chicken, kung pao tofu. I love fried rice, specifically the Cantonese style fried rice. I love lo mein. I love chow mein. I love so many Chinese foods. It is my favorite. What is yours? Tell me. Number 3, Kelly asks, what is your favorite season and why? She goes on to say, I love spring. It's a time of renewal and hope. I know a lot of people that do love spring, including my wife. She likes the buds on the trees. Where we live is particularly beautiful in the spring. We're surrounded by hardwood forests that blossom and bloom. They are glorious. Fall is equally as beautiful as those hardwood forests. Their trees change their colors in the fall. It is something to behold. Unpopular opinion, my favorite season is winter. Specifically, winter where there is snow on the ground. And the reason for that is I hate mowing my lawn. I just hate it. Mowing my lawn is the equivalent of riding a go-kart, but it's a go-kart mowing a lawn, and I just do not like to mow lawns. And so that's why I like winter. Summer for me is, I grew up in Sacramento where summers are hot. I mean, it's not like we are in Death Valley or anything like that, but it's hot. And you guys know that I served down in Argentina. Oh, and where I was in Argentina was so hot in the summertime. So I'm just not a fan of the heat. I do not want to live in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Florida, Southern Nevada. I just don't. I like where there are 4 seasons, and I would love to hear your comments as well. And while you are commenting in the live chat, let's get into some true crime headlines.
True crime headlines.
Okay, I think we need to do a Nancy Guthrie update. This article that I'm bringing to you from Fox 10 in Phoenix, written by Sarah Phillips, came out yesterday. Headline is Nancy Guthrie, family seeks renewed attention to case in a new message. Dateline is Tucson, Arizona. The family of missing 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC Today show host Savannah Guthrie, have released a new message calling for renewed attention to the case. The new statement was posted to Instagram on March 21st, which would have been Saturday, asking the Tucson community, neighbors, and friends for their support and help. The statement reads in full, quote, "We are deeply grateful for the outpouring from neighbors, friends, and the people of Tucson. We are all family now. We continue to believe it is Tucsonans, and the greeted Southern Arizona community that hold the key to finding resolution in this case. Someone knows something. It's possible a member of this community has information that they did not or do not even realize is significant. We hope people search their memories, especially around the key timelines of January 31st and the early morning hours of February 1st, as well as the late evening of January 11th. We desperately ask this community for renewed attention to our mom's case. Please consult camera footage, journal notes. Let's see. There was a comma in there. I missed it. Please consult camera footage, journal notes, text messages, observations, or conversations that in retrospect may hold significance. No detail is too small. It may be the key. We miss our mom with every breath, and we cannot be in peace until she is home. We cannot grieve. We can only ache and wonder. Our focus is solely on finding her and bringing her home. We want to celebrate her beautiful and courageous life, but we cannot do that until she is brought to a final place of rest. So they think that she's gone, and the likelihood is overwhelming. Continuing the quote, thank you for continuing to pray without ceasing. The Guthrie family, Cameron and Christine, Annie and Tommaso, Savannah and Michael. Of course, this is a case that has, I mean, in fairness, it has fallen off of the radar for so many of us. And there is a cycle to this, right? That, like, we will all be all in for a finite amount of time until maybe we all just kind of lose hope. But the Guthries are asking us to do that. So please, if you are a Tucsonian, a resident of Tucson and the surrounding area, you may have information that would lead to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie. Please call 1-800-CALL-FBI with any tips. The next one, headline that I want to bring to you guys is in the Barry Morphew case, written by Adam Sabes from Fox News. Headline, Barry Morphew ordered Suzanne cremated, prosecutors say. Remember, they are battling it out over Suzanne's remains. The daughters want to have her remains so that they can have their religious or non-religious, I don't know, rites done and finish up, and the state wants to keep them for evidence. Okay. Barry Morphew, the man charged with his wife Suzanne's murder, personally authorized her cremation in February, just before prosecutors stepped in to stop it, they claim in new court filings. In June 2025, Barry Morphew was reindicted by a Colorado grand jury following a failed prosecution in 2021 that resulted in charges being dismissed at the time. He allegedly killed his wife, who vanished on Mother's Day in 2020 before her remains were later found. At the time, the Morphews lived near Salida, I don't know how to pronounce it, Colorado, where Suzanne Morphew, 49, was last seen alive. Barry Morphew pleaded not guilty in January and is expected to stand trial in October. In February, attorneys for Macy and Mallory Morphew, who are Suzanne Morphew's daughters, filed a motion to force the state to release her remains. The motion was withdrawn on Thursday. Attorneys for both Macy and Mallory said in their initial filing that their mother's remains were at Swan Lake Funeral Home in Colorado Springs and had a funeral service planned for their mother when law enforcement took possession of the body. The lawyers argued that law enforcement in Colorado had, quote, stopped them from exercising their constitutional rights, close quote, to hold a funeral for their mother and bury her remains. Quote, this government conduct is outrageous, cruel, and shocking to the conscience, close quote, attorneys for Macy and Mallory Morphew argued. Responding to attorneys for Suzanne Morphew's daughters, prosecutors said that Barry Morphew signed off on the cremation of Suzanne Morphew. In a court filing, Barry Morphew did not take a position on the release of her body. Prosecutors said that Suzanne Morphew's remains are material evidence to their murder case against Barry Morphew, asking the court to deny the motion to release her body. Quote, the defendant in a murder case authorized the release of the murder's victim's remains prior to pending motions, litigation, and jury trial, and paid to have them cremated prior to disclosures of his experts' opinions or court rulings on the admissibility of scientific testing regarding said remains, prosecutors wrote. So the long and short of it is the daughters have withdrawn their motion to have their mother's remains, and it was never proper for Barry Morphew to sign off on her cremation anyway. All right, the last one that I wanted to bring you was from Lauren Silver at CourtTV.com. Headline reads, Corey Richens' juror reveals panel was, quote, hoping that she was innocent. What? Dateline Park City. A juror who found Corey Richens guilty of murdering her husband is speaking out about the experience, saying that the entire panel was hoping to acquit the defendant. Corey Richens was convicted of killing her husband, Eric Richens, with a deadly dose of fentanyl and cocktails she served him one evening in February 2022. Despite the fact that Corey Richens pleaded not guilty and maintained her innocence throughout the trial, one juror said, quote, there was never a not guilty check with anything, close quote. Juror number 2, who served as foreperson of the panel, told ABC's Good Morning America that the decision to convict came quickly. Yeah, we read about that. Juror number 3, identified as Christy, spoke to journalist Nate Eaton. He's with East Idaho News. about her experience. By the way, let me just tangent this for a second, guys. I gotta do it. Gotta do it. Guys, I work for an organization that is very similar to the East Idaho News. We are a hyper-local news organization. It's called EYT Media. I'm a reporter. Local, small news organizations are so important to the communities that they serve. And East Idaho News has made a name for themselves, I think mostly coming out of two main cases, right? The so-called Idaho 4. I hate to call them that, but the so-called Idaho 4. And then what's her name? Crazy psycho lady who killed her own children. Why am I blanking on her name? All I can think right now is Corey Richens. Give me a second. Oh, goodness. But anyway, Lori, Idaho lady who killed her kids. Chad and Lori Daybell. There we are. The Daybells. Lori Daybell. So probably he was able to build that because of Chad and Lori Daybell and also the Idaho 4. Nevertheless, he's doing terrific work. He and his staff. I love what they're doing. Those are just my 2 cents. So anyway, juror number 3, identified as Christy, spoke to journalist Nate Eaton about her experience. Christy said she spent much of the trial watching Corey Richens. Quote, "To see her sitting there, I couldn't get a read on her. I had no idea what the whole scope of the case was. And I remember feeling really sad when I saw her. She seemed like a small, frail woman." Close quote. Recalling specific witnesses, Christy said she was surprised by the testimony of Corey Richens' paramour, Josh Grossman. "I was not prepared for how emotional he was going to be," she said. While the jury found Corey Richens guilty in less than 3 hours, the panel had wanted to acquit the defendant, Laura told ABC. People were really sad because they did not want to find her guilty. They were really hoping that she was innocent, and we couldn't come to that conclusion, and it was really heartbreaking. This devastating reality that this family was torn apart and the poor kids will never have a dad or mom. We hardly ever get to see the inner workings of, or read about the inner workings of a deliberation room. It's kind of cool that these jurors have spoken out about their service. But the fact that they went into it wanting to, or I guess hoping that she would be innocent, goes to the system that we have. It's an imperfect system, but it is the best system in the world. Okay, let me refresh my thing here and see what you guys are saying to me. Pearl snaps, "My ring light is too bright." It is on my glasses, isn't it? It's a little hot. Time to turn that down a little bit. Thank you very much, Pearl snaps. Emmy says Italian Greek is her favorite food. I would imagine that it's both Italian and Greek, not Italian Greek. That's what I'm guessing. Glitter, love me some egg foo young. Autumn saying she just had a KFC famous bowl. Jeremy saying, lol, Panda Express Chinese. Yeah, I like Panda Express Chinese. Now, I am a person, if you don't know my shtick, I have traveled the world. And like, I have traveled the world extensively, not as a tourist, but as a business person. An occasional tourist. I've spent plenty of time in China, in Hong Kong, in Taiwan. I know what real Chinese food is. It's delicious. It's good. Don't really like, I don't like to eat, say, like the beaks and combs. I like the actual meat of the bird, and I'm not really a fan of like fish cheeks or eyeballs, but by and large, Chinese food is delicious. But I'm all about the American stuff. That is the way I am. Pearl snaps, Larry is the person you got the massage with once? No, nay. No, that was Steve-O. That was Steve. Larry was the founder of the company and the boss of both Steve and I. And yes, and it was a Thai massage in an underground, literally underground Parisian massage parlor that my friend and distributor Sebastian at the time suggested. That was quite a story. Oh my goodness. Just Ducky, Gavin, favorite food, seafood. I see food and eat it. Yeah, I've been that too. Uh, where did I see JLR streaming? I don't think that one was to me. Redondo Beach, loving my long hair. Thank you. It is I got a new blow dryer today. I ordered it months ago. It showed up today. And yeah, it's I've got a lot of body in my hair today thanks to that. Surth River, listen, I've seen this comment, but my system hasn't seen the previous. Like, I don't know which video you're talking about. If you would please go over to my old website and like if you have a link that you can share, because I would love to see the video. And I know you've been repetitive, and I'm sorry that I didn't address this already, but send it to me here, will you? I would really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Let's see. Garth B. Nutt loves seafood and the spring. Glitter is Forever says, I need to get a robot mower. I really do. I really do. I don't think it's in the family budget quite yet. Kimberly and I have been saving for a new car. That is the next major purchase we are going to make. Until then, until I can get the robot mower, I suppose I will just have to get on my little riding mower and pretend it's a go-kart and get it done. Alexandra is all about tofu. I do love tofu. It's great. Robin says, you can just cement your yard and have a lovely rock garden and astroturf. Yeah, if I were a Californian or an Arizonan, I would honestly do that. My in-laws did that in their backyard. They have a beautiful backyard that they just kind of have to blow leaves off of. It sounds great. But out here, I fear that the nature would take it over real fast. That's just the way it is. Emmy loves spring and summer, but hate the cold and rain. Mischievous Dragon, I like the fall the best. It's like the spring of summer. Yeah, it does feel good. It does feel good. All right, guys, thank you so much. Oh, let's see if we have... Mooney says, that tangent rendition reminds me of a Broadway show. Yeah, I've got a few different tangent ones. CD says, oh, wow, you lost a lot of weight. Way to go. I lost 85 pounds on carnivore ketovore. Yeah, good on you. I'm down a little over 80 pounds right now. I am just exercising more and I'm eating only whole foods. I don't eat any pre-packaged or pre-prepared foods. I eat meats and vegetables that, that are whole, unprepared. And then I just have a caloric budget that I stay under, and I feel strong. I feel healthy. I was complaining to Kimberly a little bit earlier today that I'm kind of sick of it. I'm ready to move on to the next phase where I don't have to have such a caloric deficit, where I can just be eating the right amount of calories to maintain weight, and the right foods. Obviously, I don't want to just eat like 2,600 calories of potato chips. I mean, I do want that, but I'm not going to. But I'm looking forward to phase 2. I think I've got maybe 18 to 20 more pounds that I need to go before I'm ready to do that. Lenore is wondering where I'm from. Yeah, we live in Western Pennsylvania. We're about, if you look at the western border of Pennsylvania, there's Pittsburgh in the south and Erie in the north. We're in the middle of that. That's where we are. Yeah, I see. Yeah, it's hot on. I do need to turn it down. Thank you very much. I will do that. Thanks, Pearl Snaps. Grace likes Mexican, not Tex-Mex. Women of Steel, you have 5 kids, right? Why are you mowing your lawn at all? What a great question. That is a great question, right? What exactly? Exactly. It's because I feel like like I'm a person that just sits behind a desk all day long. There are manly things that I should be doing. I should go out and do manly things. So I do have to mow the lawn. What car are we looking at? Right now we're looking at the Hyundai Palisade because we got a big family. All right. Thank you guys for the chat. Thank you for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. If you're new here, thank you so much. If you feel I deserve it, I've earned it, a like would be great. Subscription would be great. Please remember that we do hang out on Facebook, in what we call the fish tank. The best way to get there is on my website. You can click on this little fishy up in the upper corner, and that will take you to the fish tank, where we hang out and talk about all things true crime. You're always invited to join us there. You can reach out to me on the website by clicking once again on this little envelope icon, and that will find your way to me. With that, before I bid you adieu, I will say I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time to continue our coverage with all things true crime. Not sure that I will continue with the JLR situation, in perpetuity, but we will keep our eye on this. We will continue to cover it. Thank you again to all of you who are survivors that shared your story today. Deeply appreciate you, and I'm rooting for you. With that, I bid you adieu, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.